All right, Shaggy. So the regular season is over. The matchups for the playoffs are complete. And the Colorado Avalanche won the Central. An incredible regular season, but the journey is not done for this Avalanche team. Don't think just because it was a struggle to get to the top of the Central, they are done. A lot to get to on this episode of Locked On Avalanche, starting right now.
Your Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day. That's always appreciated. And you can find us on our social media outlets, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter, Locked On Avalanche on Instagram. Questions, comments, concerns, and opinions to lockedonavalanche@gmail.com. Make sure to follow us on our YouTube channel over on YouTube and hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live, and definitely sign up and subscribe to our subtext where you can chat with Kyle and I on a one-on-one basis. Link to that is in the show notes below. All right, sir. We will get to later on in our third segment. We will be giving our predictions. What we're going to do is just our predictions for the first round, not the entire playoffs. We'll go round by round. But what we will do today is we'll just do the first round as well as our Stanley Cup final prediction. So we'll get to that because that's, the meat of the sandwich. Everybody wants that, right? And then as far as the first rounds go, we'll talk about those as well. But we will start with before the weekend took place, the Avs locked up the Central Division, and a fantastic game, an entertaining game. Nathan MacKinnon is a god, and I think we all need to bow down to him. Incredible performance by him. Incredible comeback by this team as a whole in terms of a regular season. And I think when you look back, this is one of the more impressive regular seasons that the Avalanche have had, not in terms of they're just blowing everybody away, but because they had to battle for this thing pretty much for the whole season. They were never in a spot where they were like 10 points up and then faltered and then had to reacclimate themselves. This was a struggle since November.
And the fascinating thing about this team, coming off the Stanley Cup, it was just a couple months ago, they were on the outside looking in. And that was the narrative for a little bit, like on NHL Network. What are the defending Stanley Cup champions going to do? And the injuries were, of course, the storyline throughout the season. But you got career years out of Nathan MacKinnon and Mikko Rantanen. And Nate showed up against the Predators. And, of course, it came down to game 82 to secure the Central. But for everything to happen to this team, no Landeskog, Cale Makar, not there for game 82. And you still lock up the Central. It's an absolute testament to how this team is built top to bottom. And you get contributions from Mulligan, which we'll talk about. And it's incredible to see what this team has been able to put together. And you kind of get accustomed to the winning and blowing teams out and winning, like being, like you said, 10 points ahead. But you take this road for granted of getting back into this position. And you kind of forget, like, the Avalanche have rattled off a 6-game winning streak, a 7-game winning streak. Like, yeah. And when it's interrupted, everybody complains about the loss, but everybody forgets that they're making up so much ground over this time that it puts them in this back-to-back Central spot, and it's a good place to be.
Yeah. It's crazy. You mentioned that there was a point where they were technically out of a playoff spot. It was very early on. Well, early on to like middle of the season, but they were never like, even that, like when I said they were never like 10 points up and then faltered, they were never like 10 points out of a playoff spot either, right? They were a couple points, a couple games out of a playoff spot, but they never got so far back where you were like, should we throw in the towel? I know there was some panic button moments when they had that horrible stretch around the new year. They just were not playing good hockey. Yeah. But despite that, they were never completely out of it. And I don't think anybody ever counted them completely out of at least getting a playoff spot. I think everybody was kind of in the same mode of, well, they'll get going enough to at least grab a playoff spot. It's going to be a battle to get there. But when that was happening, when that losing streak was happening right around the new year, you know, we were sitting here like, yeah, we think they'll get a playoff spot to win the division. No, I don't think, I didn't think that was going to happen. Not because they needed to play incredible hockey, but I just didn't think the teams at the top would falter that much. It'd just be, you have to have two things happen at once. You got to play incredible hockey, and the other teams have to come back down to earth. And those things happened, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't know this, but the NHL Twitter page put up the largest point differential faced by a division winner. The Avalanche were 14 points back, which is the sixth most all time. That really wasn't anything talked about, because I don't think anybody really thought the Avalanche were eventually going to catch, you know, and they did right at the end. And that goes to speak to Jared Bednar, and we'll definitely talk about him in a minute too. But like I said in the beginning, I think when you look back on this season, let's play like, you know, worst case scenario that the Avalanche don't win the Stanley Cup again, which is so hard to do. I can't look back on this season as like a failure in the fact that of what you accomplished, considering the odds, considering everything. When you look at this season and you have to take into account all of the trials that they went through, to win the Central is a feather in your hat. It's not what you want. You want to win the whole thing, obviously. But when it's all said and done, if you don't, I think you can still look back on this like, man, we battled and we gave the rest of the league a pretty good scare there for a little while.
Yeah, I remember the narrative being during that losing streak and losing stretch, as long as we get in the playoffs, And that was everybody's kind of their line after the next injury came out, whether it was Nichushkin or whether it was Arturi Lehkonen or Bo Byram. It was if we could get this team in the playoffs, we'll be okay. Little did we know we're going to capture the Central again with all of the injuries and just the wacky, like the Nashville Watergate game. Like nothing was working for the Avalanche, but the Avalanche managed to climb back in quietly. It was one of those that the league kind of took notice of what the Avalanche were doing 3 days before game 82. When they put out those scenario things like, oh yeah, by the way, the Avalanche have a chance to catch the Central tonight. Surprise.
And not only that, man, like you said, like the game against the Predators, it was that makeup game, and just how poetic is it? Like that happened months ago. So they tack it on at the end of the season, and everything rides on it.
Yep.
It's not just a game that's just a throwaway game. It's like, no, the meaning to this is huge. It's almost like even if the, you know, they didn't have the water main issues, they should have just like said, you know what, we think this game will be important for the Avs. Let's just put it at the end of the season anyway.
Yeah.
It just was like meant to be that happened, something that you never see happen for a game to be postponed like that. And everything rides on it when you eventually get around to playing that. For the Avs anyway, everything did. It was great. It was a great game on top of it.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
You got and it was an awesome bookend on the season for Nathan MacKinnon to get a hat trick. Like it just right. Kind of was like the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
And he's honestly been the leader through all of this. He's been the one that everyone has rallied around, and like we mentioned, he's having a career year. For him to get a hat trick in that final game and just kind of, you know, put that extra oomph on, hey, the Central is ours.
Man, that this is the best time of the year, obviously, going into NHL playoffs. But those last few games for the Avs with Edmonton, and then with the Predators, not that the Predators were playing for anything in a playoff spot, but just, you know, the atmosphere there, and then MacKinnon getting that goal with just over a minute to go, to get the hat trick, 4 points, and you know, you just have to clamp down for another minute or so to get the division. It had playoff like atmosphere. So I am juiced and ready to go. Man, I cannot wait for this. Can't wait for it. A couple more things to get to, including injury news, and we'll talk a little bit Jared Bednar and Alexander Georgiev. We were throwing around how many of these final games would he play? Played them all. So we'll get to that.
That's why I don't coach.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we do podcasts. But first, Athletic Greens. And we've been talking about Athletic Greens for quite a while now. What is it? You put one delicious scoop of AG1 into a glass of water, and you are absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. The special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, energy, recovery, focus, even your aging, everything that's important to you. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you're eating keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or even gluten-free, and it contains less than 1 gram of sugar. There's no GMOs. There's no nasty chemical or artificial taste or anything because it tastes delicious. It might look green in color, but the stuff tastes mighty fine. I have to say so myself.
It's part of my day every day.
It is. You're hooked on it. I can tell people that for sure. Yeah. It costs you less than $3 a day, and you're investing in your health. So it's cheaper than your Starbucks or Dunkin' cold brew habit. And right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with a convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop and a cup of water every day, and that's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. So to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Once again, it's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right, so why don't we start with Alexander Georgiev, because it's like what's going on in Boston and what's going on in for the Islanders with Sorokin and everything. Like, those guys are getting the headlines, and I get it. And it's just the more that Georgiev plays, and he's up there with the stats. He's up there with them. He continues to kind of just slide under the radar. And we were throwing around these last 3 games for the Avalanche, right? Like, especially because they had a back-to-back to end the season. We were like, there's no way that he plays both of those games. But we knew that all 3 of these games were going to be important because, the division's on the line. I was thinking he was going to play against the Jets, and then, that last game against the Predators, I thought he was going to play that. But he played everything. So, if to tell me that the Avalanche weren't going after the division, that tells you otherwise.
And that win against Nashville put him tied for first with wins on the season. And he's sitting second for shutouts, I believe. He's got 5. And
did he fall to second for that? Yeah.
Sorokin with 6. So
okay,
it's you kind of want to keep him hot, I guess, going into the playoffs. Like, I didn't think you would see this much of him, but the Georgiev that you got in that Predators game, I'd be very confident with him in a series.
Yeah, I think they were just thinking, hey, we'll play him because we're going to get days off.
Yeah.
And for them, it was 3 days because they're playing Tuesday. So that was good enough for them. Like, hey, we'll play him back to back, hopefully win the division, which they did. And then you can rest up. 3 days is like 3 weeks at this stage in the season, right? When you have that many up. But he's not going to, clearly he's not going to win the Vezina. I think it's even a long shot for him to be one of the finalists, which I think is just not right. I just don't think. I feel people just are always going Hellebuck. They're kind of enamored with Hellebuck, and rightfully so. He's great, but I think you're going to have Sorokin and then Ullmark, and there's your 3. And that's not to take anything from those guys, but when you have the discussions of who's having great seasons, he's kind of like a footnote. Yeah. He's thrown in there. Nobody's like completely ignoring him, but it's almost like that last news bit on your local news was like the last 30 seconds where it's like, oh, by the way, this guy too. And he's having as good, not better, as good a season as those guys that just continue to get talked about all the time.
Yeah, and you kind of feel bad for him, but then you also, what better team to be a footnote where the entire team, no matter what you do, you're a footnote compared to the rest of the league.
Yeah.
Like when you have names like Ullmark and Gustafsson and Hellebuck, and you don't hear that much out of Vasilevsky anymore, where that used to be an everyday conversation. New names have floated to the top, and Georgiev's kind of been around for a while. And then again, the same with Jared Bednar. It's, well, of course, you remember the Avalanche, you should have good numbers. So.
And this is going to go down, in my opinion, as his best coaching job ever for him. You
Absolutely.
know, when you throw around like best coach of the year, it kind of goes like with the MVP thing, right? Is it the guy who just had an incredible season and just threw out gaudy stats, which Connor McDavid has done and will win it based on, like, he's having an otherworldly season. Like, we haven't seen a season like this in a while. So when a guy does that, he's deserving of winning the MVP.
Yep.
Or do you go by the phrase itself and who's the most valuable, right? So for coaching, or for the best coach, is it the coach of the best team? Or is it the guy who needed to coach his butt off to get his players to buy in, injury after injury after injury? Everybody bought into the system, and they go out and win the division. That is a coaching job.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to take away anything from Cassidy, but you or I could have went out there and maybe around the halfway point when they're on cruise control, and they still could have done pretty well. Like, when you're coaching a team like that, you just have to make sure nobody gets hurt and they take care of themselves. So who did the better coaching job?
Cassidy
through the course of the season.
Cassidy did less with more, and Bednar did more with less.
So that's a great way to put it, man. That is a great way to put it. So that's kind of where I won't be so upset if Georgiev doesn't even get in the finalists. He should, if you ask me, but I don't think, he's clearly not going to win it. Would it be a snub if he didn't get in the finalists? Maybe a little bit, because there's a lot of good guys that had really good seasons for goalies. But man, like, I will be if Jared Bednar doesn't get a finalist. I don't think he's going to win it, because when you have a team that breaks records like that the Bruins do, Cassidy's pretty much got it locked up, right? He does. Yeah. So, but should Bednar be in that discussion? 100%. And you can't convince me otherwise.
Yeah, it's a rough year for the Avalanche when everything has been so hard on the team, but yet they are doing such incredible stuff like Georgiev, and you got Connor McDavid doing incredible stats, and it kind of overshadows Nathan MacKinnon and Mikko Rantanen's year. And you got Cassidy coaching one of the best teams of all time, overshadowing Bednar's coaching job. It's a rough year for the Avs, even though they're having one of their better years of all time and shattering franchise numbers, that the league is doing incredible things too.
I'm locked into last year, and I apologize because I keep saying Cassidy. I'm stuck in last year. It's not Cassidy, it's Montgomery. Montgomery is
that's right. Dallas's former coach.
Yeah,
that's right.
I'm just in last
once year again, shows you how great of a coaching job if we get.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So yeah, whatever. But Montgomery will win it. Montgomery will win it easily. But I think Jared Bednar should be in this discussion hands down.
But at that point, it's not like Jim Montgomery came in there and had a sweeping change of philosophy.
Well, he might have had a little bit of a change in philosophy, but he didn't have a change in roster.
Yeah, it was pretty much the same team, but healthier.
Yeah, and the roster changed on a daily basis for the Avalanche. If a guy comes in, he's going to change the philosophy. He's going to change their style of play and stuff like that. He's gonna implement something new, and the Bruins took to it clearly. So yeah, you deserve credit for it. I'm not trying to take away, but I'm just saying, coaching. Who did a coaching job? And I think Jared Bednar did, to the letter of the term and the definition the Webster's Dictionary of coaching is exactly what Jared Bednar did this year.
If I was in those meetings for the award, I would just say there were moments that Curtis McDermott played forward. I rest my case.
Yeah. Oh man. A couple, or just I guess some injury news that Chris McFarland was talking about. He thinks Cale Makar and Josh Manson should be ready to go for game 1. Not 100% certain on that, but he felt pretty good. Like if they're not good for game 1, maybe by game 2. So they're kind of on towing that line right now, right? But he's not sure on Darren Helm. Didn't sound like he kind of set when he made the comments, kind of separated the two. He put them in two different sentences. He didn't lump Helm in with Makar and Manson. Said Makar and Manson and then Helm on the other end of it.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit okay, maybe Makar and Manson hopefully are good to go by game 1. Helm, not so much.
Honestly, if we could get Cale Makar back, it's been nice to see the Avalanche make this push. It'd be so much nicer to have Cale Makar back so it doesn't have to feel like a push.
Yeah.
It just feels like business as usual again. That's what I miss.
Yeah, I know. That'd be a big push for game 1. Crowd's gonna be going crazy. I was saying to a lot of people how great would it be if Landeskog's first game back, if he came back, was in the playoffs at home, in front of that crowd. You'll get something similar for Cale Makar because obviously everybody knows that he's hurt. He didn't miss nearly as much time as Gabe Landeskog, but he missed some time. So you have game 1, playoffs in Denver, and Cale Makar coming back. That's his first game back in a couple weeks. You'll get just as much craziness at Ball Arena than you would for a Gabe Landeskog return. Close.
Yeah, he's been missed.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Let's get to it, my friend. We're going to do our predictions for round 1. We're not going to go full NCAA bracket and fill it all out right now. We're just going to go round 1 and our final.
We have a bracket challenge for that.
We do. Yeah, I should put I'll put that in the show notes as well. There is a bracket challenge that you see going around all over the place on NHL sites, but we do have one. I'll put that in the show notes too if you want to join up for that. It's open to anybody. So let me get to the website that I had open that now shut on me for some reason, that had all the first round matchups. I think we're going to start in the East here. So I got it right here. Okay. All right. We'll start in the East, and I think the easiest one here is the Bruins and Panthers. So how many games do you have the Bruins winning this?
Honestly, this one would be a sweep. Boston.
It's so difficult to predict a sweep, but I feel like I have to do at least one, and this is the easiest one to say. If there was going to be a sweep in the first round, you kind of feel like you could always have that game.
Yeah.
I always like those game 3s are always like the first game in the other team's dome. Like you always like that's the one that an opposing team that's as much as an underdog could win, just to, going off the home crowd and stuff like that. But if the Bruins can kind of overcome that first 10 minutes of game 3, if they are up 2-0, I see this, 4-5 games at the most for me for this one.
Yeah, I really don't see with how Florida is and their goaltending issues. It's 70% Boston could sweep this thing, 30% they'll win a game by some kind of fluke. But I just don't believe in Florida.
No. I mean, Florida has been playing good. You want to play good heading into the playoffs, and they are, but you're running into a buzzsaw, clearly, with the Bruins. Maple Leafs and Tampa. Seems like the annual first-round matchup for these guys. Does Tampa Bay get off of the first-round schneid that the Avalanche are so familiar with for the second round?
Sorry, Toronto. Not this year.
You don't think so?
No.
Okay.
I'm going Tampa in this one, and this is a 6-game series.
I think it's a 6-game. I do. I think this is the year Tampa. If Tampa can get past the first round.
Oh, Toronto?
Or I'm sorry, Toronto. If Toronto can get past the first round, I think so much weight is off their shoulders, and they will just play a little bit more loose. That if this is going to be in their head, it's very possible. Man, like it's got to end at some point, doesn't it? It has to.
I don't know. There last year and the year before, it felt like there's like some supernatural force against them, and now I'm bought in. I'm like, okay, they're cursed.
I'll say this: other than you, Adam Denker is probably the host that I talk to the most over at Locked On. He is not happy with how Tampa Bay has been playing. So,
well, this is what Tampa does. They don't care about the regular season.
That's what I told him. That's what I told him. He's like, he can't continue to go off of that. And I'm like, well, you know, people are. And he's like, yeah, of course they are. But
2 out of the 3 last Stanley Cups. Come on, Adam.
I know. But I'm not going to go with him, man. I think Toronto turns this thing around, and I think this is a 7-game series again, and Toronto gets past them. I do. That's where I'm at. Devils and the New York Rangers. I think this could be another good series. But I know where you're going with this one. But how many games?
This one's honestly maybe a 5-game series.
Oh man, really?
This is the Devils. They're here to make a statement. The Rangers are doing business. The same thing that scares me in Seattle is the same thing that should scare the East with New Jersey. They are here to take names.
Kind of unproven though in the playoffs.
Well, one way to do that. One way to do that.
Yeah.
This team is built for it. Like goaltending is their shakiest spot. Defense, they're solid. Forwards are deep for days. This one for me was like the toughest one to pick. Because I just feel like it's a pretty evenly matched series. I would lean more towards the Devils with certain things than I would for the Rangers. But the one where you lean heavily is in the goalie position, and goal, like playing goal in the playoffs is like pitching for baseball in the playoffs. And just for that reason, I just feel like I have to go the Rangers, but I think it's going to go 7. I think it's going to go 7. And I think it's just, it could be one of those high, because they both have high scoring offenses. Yeah.
But can Shesterkin shut them down? I think, he's capable of doing that. If he can't, you're looking at what you said, maybe like a 5-game Devils series. If he can't, a lot's going to be riding on him.
Yeah, Vita Vanacek, if he can play like he did in the regular season, it'll be fine. But he has those weird games. So if a couple of those in the playoffs, you're out. So it's up in the air there.
And the last one in the East, Carolina Hurricanes and the New York Islanders. What do you got for this one?
Carolina in 5.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I like the Islanders team, but I think Carolina is darn good. They're a tough team to beat. They are just solid from top to bottom. So I think I agree with you. I think the Islanders might sneak one out. The Hurricanes have had a couple games, one including the Avalanche, the one that I went to. They've had a couple of these games where they completely outplay their opponent and lose.
Yeah,
you might get something like that. A fluke loss, but I think overall you're getting a 5-game series.
A Carolina team that's looking to shake off, the year in, year out playoff woes. They're really trying to make a push this year with that team. If it doesn't happen, who knows what Carolina looks like next year.
Yep. We'll switch over to the West. Let's start with the Dallas Stars and Minnesota Wild. We got the division matchup that the Avalanche avoided. What do you got for here?
Which version of the devil do I want to pull for? This might be crazy. I feel like this could be a Minnesota in 6.
That's not crazy. Not crazy. It's tough. I mean, Dallas has been pretty good all season long, but a couple struggles here and there, but I think they've been pretty consistent. Minnesota, up and down season, but they were riding high for a little while. They had the division for a little while, and then they kind of let it slip through their fingers. So, this is going to be a tough series to pick, but I think this thing goes 7, and I think Minnesota just sneaks it out.
Yeah,
I do. But this could go either way, really.
Minnesota's physical enough to get Dallas out of there quick.
Yeah, definitely. Vegas and the Winnipeg Jets. This one could get ugly.
5-game for the Gold Domers.
I don't know. Like, maybe I'm just thinking, like, giving too much credit to the goalies, but I think Hellebuck can steal you a game or two. So I still think it's Vegas, but I think it'll go like 6. I think it'll be a 6-game series, but Vegas. It wouldn't surprise me if it goes 5.
It's all dependent on which Winnipeg team shows up.
Yeah.
This last time the Avalanche played Winnipeg, that was a vapid and just empty team.
Yeah.
So
very true. Well, there was a lot of guys missing. So, Oilers and Los Angeles Kings. This could be a good one.
You know what? Why not? Kings in 7.
That's what I got.
Really?
And I'm not trying to. How I'm so big on goaltending in the playoffs. The Oilers don't have it.
Yeah.
They just don't have it. Not to where it should be. Not Stanley Cup caliber, playoff caliber. It's okay, but it needs to be great. And I just don't feel like they have it. And you can't outscore teams game after game in the playoff. And that's what they're going to try to do. It's possible it might win you a game or two, but you really think you can go that far? It's worked for them like throughout the season, but this is the playoffs. This is a different animal. And I think it'll win them some games, but I think when it goes 7, I just think the Kings will take it in 7 games. This is gonna be a good series.
The Kings are that friend of a friend that you bring to a party and destroys everything because he doesn't know anybody there, and he's not going to have to deal with the repercussions. Like, he's just like, it's cool to be here. What do I have to lose? And he just has a great time. That's what the Kings. They shouldn't be here yet. Their rebuild's not due. They
further along than you think.
Yeah,
it really is.
It should be like next year or the year after before they should be making this kind of impact. So they're kind of in on house money. So what do they have to lose? Like, just being here is better than they anticipated.
Yeah, I mean, maybe like the seeding that they were at, but maybe they're thinking could get it like a wild card or something. But don't sleep on them. No, they're a really good team. So clearly, if I think they can beat the Oilers, but could go either way. If I'm going 7, clearly I think this is going to be a good series, and it wouldn't surprise me if the Oilers win it because they're having a really good season. But like I said, I'm just big on the goalie side of things when it comes to the postseason, and I just don't know if the Oilers have it. And finally, we have our boys, the Avs, going up obviously against the Seattle Kraken. I will be doing a crossover tomorrow with Erica of Locked On Kraken. Just her and I will be doing a crossover for that. So that will be tomorrow's episode where we'll kind of break things down. But for now, I guess I'll throw my pick out there now. Give you a little spoiler alert. But what do you think for Avs and Kraken?
This team, I've said it 100,000 times, they scare me to death. It's going to be a 6-game series, but the Avs will squeak it out.
It doesn't scare me that much, and maybe that'll come back to bite me. But it's just the way that the Avs have been playing to win the division. I feel like they just have so much confidence right now. Kraken don't have Andre Burakovsky. I'm not saying he's Connor McDavid, but he's a scoring option for them. They're brand new to the playoffs. They might just be getting in a little bit over their head right now, going up against the Avalanche. Like, everything is there for the Avs to. It's not going to be a sweep. I don't feel it's going to be like that. But I think you'll get the Seattle that third game that I'm talking about. That you go back to the other team's place and kind of they get the juices flowing because it's their first home game. Maybe you lose that one, and then you win game 4 and come back and win game 5. I feel like this is going to be a 5-game series.
Watch every game of this playoffs be 7-game series.
Probably.
We're getting our due from last year.
So throw your picks in the comments below over on Twitter or on YouTube, obviously. And the last thing we're going to do is just right off the top of the playoffs, we'll put out our Stanley Cup finals predictions. Obviously, I think, we have to throw the Avalanche in there. I think we're both comfortable doing that. Not to say it's a home run, but they're in a good enough spot where, yeah, maybe they should get back into the Stanley Cup final. But who will they be going up against? What say you?
Avs and Devils. Rematch 01.
And who, man? So you'll be fine with that. I mean, obviously you'd want the Avalanche to win, but if they don't, your second team is there.
I'll quietly cheer, but sob. I'll have tears of joy and sadness.
Yeah, for me, it's like I just love how everybody's not sleeping on them, but nobody wants to pick the Bruins because it's almost like it's the easy thing to do is to pick the Bruins. But the other side of it is like it's going to be tough for them to get there. And you said something about the Hurricanes that was like if they don't do it this year, it would be interesting to see what they look like next year. Like how much change do they go through if they go through another season and don't get to the promised land, at least, some version of that and making the cup final. But I think they do this year, man. I think they get there. And I think it's going to be an Avalanche Hurricanes Stanley Cup final.
Okay.
So that's where I'm at for this season. Will probably be totally wrong. So what do you think, people? Throw those in the comments as well, your first round matchups and what you think the Stanley Cup final is going to be. As for us, that's going to wrap it up for today. And like I said, tomorrow we'll have the crossover episode with myself and Erica from Locked On Kraken because that's game day. So we're throwing that episode out the morning of game 1 in Colorado. And then Kyle and I will obviously be back the day after that to discuss everything that happened in game 1. So that'll be it for today, everybody. Thank you for tuning in and making it your first listen of the day. That's always appreciated. He is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. I'm Chris Maselli. This is the Locked On Avalanche podcast, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.